7 politicians, 120 minutes of shouting, and one massive state hanging in the balance.
Yeah, it really feels like the political equivalent of a pressure cooker right now.
It totally does. And let's set the stage here, because mail-in ballots are like literally hitting mailboxes today for the June 2nd California gubernatorial primary.
Right, right.
Voters are opening those envelopes while staring down some pretty brutal realities. I mean, unemployment in the state is tied for the highest in the entire nation. Gas prices are soaring way above the national average. And the race to replace term-limited Governor Gavin Newsom has just evolved into this chaotic, wide-open free-for-all.
It's a mess, and the stakes carry way far beyond just state lines, which kind of explains the sheer volume of noise we're hearing from that debate stage.
Exactly. So to figure out what actually matters in all that noise, we pulled a huge stack of sources for this deep dive. We're looking at the recent debate transcripts, the latest political polling data, real-time shifts in betting markets.
Oh, the betting markets are fascinating right now.
They really are. And we've got on-the-ground reporting from CalMatters, The Guardian, and the LA Times. Our mission today is to unpack the core policy divides and figure out what this primary actually reveals about the future of California.
And before we jump in, we should probably add a quick note for everyone listening.
Oh, absolutely. Look, you, the listener, you need to know that we are covering some really heavily charged political topics today.
Yeah, very charged.
And we want to make it crystal clear, we are not taking sides here. We're not endorsing any left-wing or right-wing viewpoints. We are simply acting as impartial guides. We just want to show you exactly what these candidates are arguing and why.
Right. It's the only way to genuinely understand the mechanics of this race. You just have to look at the arguments objectively.
So let's start with those mechanics, because to understand why everyone was screaming at each other on that debate stage, we first have to look at a recent political earthquake. It completely scrambled the starting line.
You're talking about Eric Swalwell.
Exactly. Eric Swalwell, top-tier Democratic candidate, just suddenly drops out of the race. He exited amid allegations of sexual harassment and assault, which, we should note, he strongly denies.
Yeah, he completely denies them. But his exit acted as a huge catalyst. I mean, when a frontrunner suddenly vanishes, you instantly have this large block of unattached voters just looking for a new home.
Right.
It changes the calculus for literally every campaign manager in the state.
But I'm stuck on who actually benefited from that exit. Xavier Becerra, the former Health and Human Services Secretary under Biden, saw his poll numbers jump overnight.
Yeah, a massive jump.
When Swalwell exited, Becerra catapulted from 4% all the way up to 13%. He instantly tied for the lead. Why would Swalwell dropping out instantly benefit a Biden cabinet member? I mean, they seem like they appeal to totally different factions.
Well, it really comes down to institutional gravity.
Institutional gravity.
Yeah, so when a race feels chaotic, a significant portion of the electorate, they just gravitate toward the candidate with the most establishment backing, the biggest name recognition.
Oh, I see.
Becerra basically absorbed the voters who just wanted a perceived heavyweight to consolidate the field. But by jumping to the front of the pack like that, he gained a giant target on his own back for the debate.
He definitely took heavy fire. But we need to look at the rest of this field to understand where that fire came from.
Right, it's a crowded stage.
Very. On the Democratic side, Becerra is fending off Tom Steyer. He's a billionaire who has already poured $132 million of his own money into his campaign.
A staggering amount of money.
Yeah, $132 million. Then you have Matt Mahan, the moderate mayor of San Jose, Antonio Villaraigosa, the centrist former mayor of LA, and Katie Porter, a progressive former congresswoman, known for her viral whiteboard takedowns.
And then on the Republican side, you feature two leading contenders trying to capitalize on all this Democratic infighting.
Right.
You have Chad Bianco, the populist sheriff of Riverside County, and Steve Hilton, a former Fox News host who actually carries an official endorsement from Donald Trump.
Which brings up the terrifying mathematics of how California actually votes. The state uses this jungle primary system.
Right, which throws everything out of whack.
Yeah. Everyone runs on the exact same ballot, regardless of their party affiliation. And only the top 2 vote-getters advance to November. Period.
Just the top 2.
It's like, I don't know, a high-stakes game of musical chairs and somebody just yanked the biggest chair away right before the music stopped. Everyone is scrambling. Or it's like 5 people trying to share a single parachute.
That's a great way to put it. The math dictates that if the Democrats keep fighting over that parachute, they might just tear it to shreds.
Wow.
And then the 2 Republicans, who brought their own separate parachutes, will be the only ones to land safely in November.
So Democrats could theoretically get locked out of the governor's race entirely.
It's a very real statistical possibility. The state leans heavily Democratic, sure, but with 5 major Democrats dividing the vote and only 2 Republicans consolidating the right, yeah, the math is dangerous.
And because that parachute math is so dangerous, the candidates couldn't just rely on party loyalty on the debate stage. They had to frantically carve out a unique identity.
And the fastest way to do that, weaponizing California's current crises and pointing fingers.
The blame game.
Exactly. And the partisan divide in how they diagnose the state's problems is incredibly stark.
Yeah, the Democrats largely target external forces. They blame greedy corporations, specifically oil and insurance companies, for squeezing the middle class.
Right.
And they lean heavily into blaming Donald Trump. They're tying high gas prices to his conflicts with Iran and blaming grocery costs on his tariff policies.
But the Republicans, meanwhile, they focus their fire entirely inward. They argue the call is coming from inside the house, so to speak.
Yeah, Steve Hilton forcefully argued that the state needs an intervention after 16 years of one-party rule.
Exactly. They place the blame squarely on the Democrat-controlled legislature and on Governor Gavin Newsom.
And that focus on Newsom created arguably the most revealing moment of the entire 2-hour debate. The moderators asked every candidate to give Governor Newsom a letter grade for his tenure.
Oh, the grading segment. That was fascinating.
The Republicans naturally handed out an F. Hilton and Bianco branded his leadership a flat-out failure. But the Democrats offered these bizarrely squishy, cautious answers.
Very squishy.
Porter called him bold. Becerra said his work was game-changing. Mahan offered a slightly more critical incomplete.
Which is funny, considering the context.
Right. Why the hesitation? If you are a Democrat running on the idea that the state needs massive fixing, how do you convince voters to hire you without trashing the governor from your own party who built the house?
Well, what's fascinating here is that they're walking an incredibly precarious tightrope.
How so?
You need to convince primary voters that you possess unique skills to fix the state's housing and crime issues, right? But you have to make that pitch without insulting the architect of the current system.
Because Newsom is still popular.
It's exactly. Gavin Newsom remains highly popular with the core Democratic base. If you attack him too harshly, you alienate the exact voters you need to survive the jungle primary.
So they grade him an incomplete just to play it safe. But avoiding a direct attack on Newsom meant the Democrats had to draw blood somewhere else.
And they did. They turned on each other's policy platforms.
Right. It really exposed deep ideological rifts on how to solve the state's most expensive problems. The biggest flashpoint was healthcare.
Oh, definitely.
The debate highlighted this massive push for a publicly funded, single-payer Medicare for All system, and the estimated price tag attached to that system sits at $392 billion.
A number that large fundamentally alters the conversation.
$392 billion. That's hard to even wrap your head around.
It really is. And it forces candidates to choose between pure progressive ideals and harsh fiscal realities. This isn't just about policy. It's an existential battle for the soul of the Democratic Party.
Steyer and Becerra champion it. They want the Medicare for All system. But the moderate Democrats hit the brakes hard. Villaraigosa dismissed the idea as pie in the sky.
Yeah.
And Mahan bluntly stated that the candidates supporting it simply lack a plan to actually pay for it. So the moderates are basically looking at the state ledger and saying, we literally can't afford a $392 billion program.
That is the core of the moderate argument. They demand fiscal caution.
Right.
But the progressive wing argues that the current system is already bleeding residents dry, and that massive structural overhaul is the only moral path forward, regardless of the initial sticker shock.
And the Republicans obviously oppose the massive public spending entirely. But Democrats countered that the Republican approach relies on tax policies that would slash up to 2 million people from public health coverage.
Right. It showcases 2 entirely different philosophies of governance clashing in real time.
We saw a similar fracture over energy policy and the soaring gas prices. The entire field split completely over a proposal to suspend the state gas tax to give residents immediate financial relief.
Yeah, that was a messy split.
The leading Republicans, Bianco and Hilton, support suspending the tax entirely. Hilton even proposed rolling back many of the state's climate goals to lower costs at the pump. But the Democrats broke ranks completely.
They really did.
Matt Mahan and Tony Thurmond actually agree with the Republicans. They also support a gas tax suspension.
And this is where you see economic pressure overriding party platforms. I mean, if you represent working-class commuters who are paying nearly $6 a gallon just to get to work,
Abstract climate goals start taking a back seat.
Exactly. They take a backseat to immediate financial survival. Mahan and Thurman are just reading the anxiety of their constituents.
But the rest of the major Democrats, Becerra, Porter, Steyer, and Villaraigosa, strongly oppose the suspension.
Right, they took a different route.
Steyer argued for slapping heavy taxes on oil industry profits instead. Porter, Villaraigosa, and Mahan pushed for a balancing act, keeping oil refineries operating to stabilize prices right now while slowly working toward greater electrification.
Which goes back to that existential battle we talked about. You have progressive change agents wanting rapid transitions, willing to spend massive sums, and moderate reformists demanding incremental change.
But when policy differences aren't enough to separate candidates in a tight race, campaigns inevitably turn to throwing mud.
Oh, always.
And this debate delivered plenty of mudslinging. Every major candidate took incoming fire regarding past scandals and skeletons.
Let's start with Katie Porter.
Yeah, she faced heavy scrutiny over her management style. A viral video from 2021 surfaced recently, showing her snapping at and berating a staffer.
And a visual like that can severely damage a candidate whose entire brand relies on advocating for the everyday worker.
But she didn't apologize on stage. She fired back. She pointed directly at the men interrupting each other on stage and declared, "This is worse than my teenagers at dinner."
Wow.
She argued their constant bickering was a far worse display of temperament. But, does a viral deflection like that actually work, or is it just a clever soundbite that avoids the question?
Well, it acts as a shield in the moment,
Yeah.
right? It redirects the audience's attention to the chaotic format of the debate itself. It makes her opponents look childish while she plays the adult in the room. But honestly, it rarely erases the underlying vulnerability.
Xavier Becerra faced his own vulnerabilities. As his poll numbers jumped, the attacks on his record intensified. Rivals hammered his time in the Biden administration.
New York Times report.
Yes. They cited a New York Times investigation alleging his federal department processed unaccompanied migrant children like an assembly line.
And the criticism there really focuses on the consequences of speed. The report claimed that by prioritizing rapid processing, the department failed to properly vet sponsors.
Which is awful.
It resulted in children ending up in dangerous, exploitative child labor jobs.
Becerra forcefully pushed back, though. He dismissed the criticism as a MAGA talking point and argued that the Department of Homeland Security actually held responsibility for those outcomes.
He was very defensive.
Very. He also had to spend time defending himself against a separate corruption scandal, noting his former chief of staff recently pleaded guilty to stealing campaign funds.
Right.
He pointed out he was never charged or implicated in that case.
But here's the thing. When you spend your allotted debate time explaining why you weren't indicted for your staffer's crimes, you are losing valuable minutes that should be spent pitching your vision to the voters.
Right. Tom Steyer faced a similar defensive battle. He positions himself as this progressive climate activist, but rivals attacked his vast wealth, pointing out his former hedge fund invested heavily in fossil fuels and private prisons.
It severely undermines his climate activist persona.
It really does. They just hammered the hypocrisy between his current message and his past profits, and the Republican candidates faced fierce controversies of their own, too.
Oh, absolutely.
Chet Bianco drew intense criticism for defending his past membership in the Earth Keepers, an extremist group. He even drew audible groans from the debate audience when he falsely claimed COVID-19 vaccines had poisoned millions of Americans.
Just audible groans in the room. Meanwhile, Steve Hilton repeatedly dodged direct questions from his opponents on whether he believed Donald Trump lost the 2020 election. He just completely refused to give a definitive answer.
So what does this all mean? When a debate devolves into 120 minutes of bickering over past scandals, does it actually shift the polls or just alienate the voters?
Well, the data suggests that chaotic debates often backfire on the perceived frontrunners.
Yeah, I was looking at the Kalshi betting markets. Following the debate, Becerra's odds actually dropped by a full 7%.
No.
The odds makers clearly watched him play defense for 2 hours and lost confidence in his momentum.
Because markets hate uncertainty. And when voters and observers watch candidates shout over each other rather than articulating clear solutions, that uncertainty just spikes.
And that uncertainty connects to a much larger, darker theme running through this entire cycle. This chaotic debate didn't happen in a vacuum.
No, not at all.
The shouting on that stage directly reflects a broader sense of instability and anxiety felt by voters. People are watching global and local crises pile up simultaneously.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the candidates are frantic because the electorate just exhausted.
Nationally, voters are watching a fragile U.S.-Iran ceasefire play out. The White House insists the conflict is over, but missiles are literally still flying.
Right, and it causes massive market swings.
Exactly. We saw the Dow jump 600 points simply on rumors of progress toward a deal.
People check their retirement accounts and see wild swings driven by events entirely out of their control.
And the local issues feel just as uncontrollable for Californians. The state is currently investigating State Farm Insurance over 400 alleged legal violations regarding how they handled wildfire responses.
400 violations.
Yeah, 400. Survivors report the company refused to communicate and made inconsistent decisions on claims. If you lose your house in a fire and the insurance company ghosts you, the system feels fundamentally broken.
It creates a profound sense of insecurity. You pair that with sudden economic shifts, and the anxiety just compounds.
Right. The tech and biotech sectors are slashing jobs left and right. AI is driving massive layoffs. The biotech giant Gilead just announced they're laying off 108 workers in Redwood City.
It's scary for workers.
It is. And in some communities, the crisis is literally washing up on the beach. In Coronado, residents are dealing with a tsunami of raw sewage. Up to 30 million gallons of sewage-tainted wastewater from Tijuana flows in daily.
That is disgusting.
It's causing beach closures and unsafe bacteria levels. It feels like a game of apocalyptic bingo.
Right. And when you synthesize all of these data points, the global conflicts, the failing insurance markets, the sudden layoffs, the environmental hazards, you understand what the voters actually want.
Which is?
They aren't looking for a candidate holding the thickest stack of policy white papers. They're looking for a steady hand in an incredibly volatile era, a leader capable of managing overlapping crises without panicking.
And the restrictive formats and constant interruptions of the debate stage really failed to reveal who that steady hand might be. We watched a race turned upside down by a sudden exit. We explored multi-billion-dollar divides on healthcare and energy. And we witnessed a debate stage that ultimately produced a lot more heat than light.
And with mail-in ballots already sitting on kitchen tables, the candidates are rapidly running out of time.
They really are, and this matters to you, the listener, regardless of where you live. California's economy and its policies frequently set the trend for the rest of the nation.
Absolutely.
What happens in Sacramento today often dictates the national conversations on climate, healthcare, and economic policy tomorrow. So we want to leave you with a final thought to mull over on your own. With millions of ballots currently sitting on kitchen tables and the state's unique jungle primary threatening to lock out entire voting blocks, you have to wonder about the mechanics of our elections. Does a primary system designed to reward the top two vote-getters actually elevate the most capable leader? Or does it simply reward the person who shouts the loudest in a crowded room?